I am honored to introduce our very first speaker, Stephen Potter of Mid-Continent Public Library. I'm from Kansas City, and I'm proud to call Mid-Continent one of my local libraries, but honestly, it's one of the largest library systems in the United States, so I can't really claim it. I'm just happy to be nearby. We're going to hear this morning from Director Steve Potter. He's been at the library for 34 years. And as director for 12 years, has done so many wonderful things for the library, taking them from the very earliest version of website to a modern and beautiful website. He got a bond issued, passed, proposition to get so many new buildings, complete refresh of their system. The thing I love most about Steve is that he is a confident leader who's not shy about guiding the way, and yet he is always giving so much credit to his team. So it's very appropriate that Steve should be talking about how to build a culture of wellness at your library, starting with your team and having that culture of wellness extend out into your community. And it's such an important issue right now that I hope you'll join us for just a minute to hear Steve speak.
Thanks so much for spending some time with me, and hopefully I can share some interesting ideas and some findings that we had at Mid-Continent. And some of the findings were very sort of serendipitous and organic as we just started doing some interesting things. So just real quickly about Mid-Continent Public Library. We are in Missouri, around and including Kansas City, Missouri. About 33 locations right now, depending upon how you count. And of course, we are remodeling and rebuilding a lot right now. And we have about a $60 million budget. What else should I say? About 750 employees, roughly half are full-time benefits eligible employees, and the rest make up other sort of status of the library system. We are among the top 75 larger libraries in the United States, but we're sort of a consolidated library that what you find is that we are urban, suburban, ex-urban, and rural, depending upon which area of our location you visit and which branch you visit. So we've got it all, which is one of the other reasons that it's so fun to be the library director at Mid-Continent Public Library most days. So one of the things that I think is really important as we move forward on this is to remember that culture eats planning for lunch. It doesn't matter. As we are talking about health and wellness, and your first intuition is going to be, hey, I'm going to buy Apple Watches for everybody, or I'm going to buy gym memberships and I'm going to get a bunch of water bottles. No number of pedometers or water bottles will get you to where you want to go if you don't change the culture first, the underlying culture. So always remember that culture will eat breakfast, will eat planning for lunch, and so you got to deal with the heart of it first. So when we started walking down this road for a healthier and more wellness, embracing wellness in our library system, it was really interesting where we started seeing some opportunities. The very first thing that we ever did that had a wellness impact, believe it or not, was building maintenance, and it was carpet. That was our very first foray. When I was a regional manager, we were needing to replace a bunch of the carpet in our library. And I started looking at different carpets and carpet grades. And what I discovered is that for virtually no additional price, I mean, it was just nominal, right? You could get a much deeper thread count on your carpet and get padded carpet. And it would last for about 5 years longer than the type of carpet that we were using. It's like, okay, well, spend a little bit more money, you don't have to change it as often. But then what I began to discover is, hey, padded carpet is good on your ankles, good on your knees, good on your hips. You know, when you go home at night, you don't feel as tired. When little kids run and fall down, they don't cry as loud. They still cry, but they don't cry as loud. And you can't prove a negative. I can't prove how many knee replacements we saved because we have padded carpet, but we know we did. We know this was a good thing. And then we started thinking about what are other things that we can do? Things that make sense, but also help the overall health and wellness and well-being of our staff. Another thing that we did, now this was before the Affordable Care Act, and we started doing biometrics for all. So many of you, I'm sure, are in programs where you have to, when it's time for your insurance renewal, you have to do the health risk assessment and the biometrics and things like that. We said, Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that, health company, but we want to do it for all of our employees, including those half-time hourly employees who aren't covered by insurance. And they're like, well, why? That doesn't make any sense to us. And I was like, yeah, but it makes sense to us, because what's happening is for those folks, many of those folks, that is the first opportunity or closest opportunity that they had to like an annual physical, right? So it allowed them to get on top of things, number one. Number two, it also helped us have a more healthy workforce that we were drawing from. These half-time hourly employees eventually became our full-time benefits employees, and we were getting them healthy before they were coming on our health plan, which is a good thing. But it precipitated this whole culture of wellness. Then, last thing that happened sort of early on with us is our insurance company gave us a wellness stipend one year. And the idea was, here's $10,000, buy water bottles, whatever. And we got to talking about it and thinking about it, and we said, what would really make the biggest and best change for us is if we hired a wellness coach. And so we actually took that money and we hired her on initially at 15 hours a week. And she had a little newsletter and told us how to cook Thanksgiving dinner healthy, and would put together walking challenges and things like that. And it just became part of the normal scheme of things. We started inviting Bonnie to our insurance renewals and all kinds of, just embedded her into our culture to make things better for our staff. Now, right before the pandemic, and I have no idea why they did this, she worked for a hospital company, and her hospital company did away with her division. And, like 2 months later, they were scrambling to find registered nurses, of which she is one, and so, but it was our benefit, because as soon as we discovered that their health company, or that the hospital was doing away with her, we immediately hired her. So she's now on staff. She's not like a contractor. She's actually part of our staff. And she sets in on our insurance renewals, and she looks at and when people come to her and say the lights are too harsh, she's the one who goes and looks at it and determines, okay, well, what can we do? How can we make your workplace more inviting? Things in that line. So the real takeaway from this, though, is look for unexpected opportunities. If you remember, none of this was me saying, hey, let's go figure out how to do wellness. It was all about, there's this great, interesting opportunity that's going on, and how can we fold wellness into it? How can we make a more healthy workforce through that? So as we did this, and we started thinking about things in terms of health and wellness, and productivity and health and wellness, it started to get into our DNA and our bloodstream. So as we started rebuilding our library buildings, we started thinking about them in terms of health and wellness. So these are a few things that happen in the redesign of our libraries, and we've redesigned or reimagined all 33 of our locations. So let me just show you what I'm representing up here. So I think probably the most let me start with the most pedestrian, and then I'll go to the more interesting things. So the most pedestrian things that we have here, changing out our lights. So no more compact fluorescent, no more ugly, harsh lights, going to LEDs, increasing natural light whenever we can. Natural light's wonderful, particularly in a public library, and if you don't have an archival feature, because you get triple pane glasses, and it doesn't bleach out books the way it used to back in the 80s when I first started working in libraries. So look for natural light, LEDs as opposed to compacts. And LEDs, of course, are cheaper to operate. I mean, it's a win-win, right? Bottle fillers. So that was another thing that we did. So we replaced all of our drinking fountains, because they were all 20 years old and need to be replaced anyway, but we also included bottle fillers, which encourage people to drink water and do all of that. Now let's get to some of the more, the couple more exciting things that we've done. The picture down here in the bottom is a wellness room, and we have this in probably about 20 of our libraries. And so it's a small room, no windows, lockable door, thumb lock, so it's got sort of the occupied on the side. You can see it just has a chair, telephone, table. And the idea initially was to help support our nursing mothers who were coming to story times, but also our staff. I'm sure, like all the rest of you, 80% female roughly, so supporting our staff as well. And so the idea was that people could come in here and use this room for those sorts of purposes if they wanted to. But we decided you could use it for any wellness purpose, right? You could go in there if you just needed to get away from all the flashing lights, or get away from the loudness of story time if you're sort of noise sensitive. If you needed to administer, I don't know, an infusion or something, you just didn't want to do it out in the middle of the library, we have this wellness room that you can do. We actually listed those. There's actually an app in Kansas City where nursing mothers can find rooms all over. We've listed them in all of those. I mean, and it's been highly successful, not just for our staff. We kind of did it for our staff, but also doing it for our public. And so win-win. Last one I wanted to talk about up here is our moss wall. We have a couple of moss walls in our libraries where we basically built these artistic walls of moss. And it's the idea that conceptually the idea is bringing the inside out and the outside in. It's a sort of design principle that we've been using with our libraries, so that we'll have a big wall of windows that's overlooking trees and grass and wonderfulness, right? And so as you're sitting inside, you can feel when you're staying inside, you can feel the outside. And we also do things like bring in moss walls. But then you also, on the other side of those giant windows, and on days when it's nice in Kansas City, we have patios, porches, we shoot the Wi-Fi out there, you can check out a computer. So basically anything that you can do inside, you can do outside, but you can enjoy and appreciate the outside. It's kind of like the thing that we were talking about with the big idea, the fellow who meditates and never saw a tree. Well, this is kind of the idea. We're encouraging people to either stay inside and look out the giant windows and see a tree, or just go outside. And we've done lots of things. We actually have a half-mile walking trail on one of our locations and several other things to encourage people not to think of the library as place, but to think of the library as an information service, and we bring the inside out and the outside in. Okay. This is a new initiative, is actually paid for with art funds, Access Wellness. So one of the things that we ended up doing is, as we were moving forward, and through the pandemic, we were trying to figure out what can we do to help our community with wellness opportunities. So we created these wellness kits, and you can see within the wellness kit, there's a scale, oxygen, blood pressure, thermometer, tells you how to use all these things. And then here's community healthcare resources. So again, the same sort of thing that we've always been talking about, right? Where sometimes with our early staff, they may not know that there's a problem. Well, now, if you kind of suspect you might have a problem, you can take this kit home, you can do these things, you can call the wellness resources and get help. Another part of this program is programming. So we've been doing some additional health and wellness outreach programming for our public. We also have a couple of computers and MiFis. So if you have a doctor's appointment, a telemedicine appointment, and you don't know what to, you don't know how to operate these things, you can actually go to the library, we'll check out a Chromebook, we'll check out a MiFi, we'll check out a wellness kit, and then you can have your doctor's appointment. So pretty excited about that. This is a pretty new program, like I said, funded with art funds, and we're looking forward to moving forward on that even more. Lastly, this is my last content slide. The Culinary Center at Green Hills. So this is almost sort of like a culmination of all of this and how we are. This is a library that's currently under construction. And the idea here was building on the lessons that we learned from the Free Library and their culinary literacy center that they did. We have built a culinary literacy center in Kansas City. As you can see, it's all sort of food themed. I'm not sure if you can see the giant fork here that's in the salad that is the landscaping. The children's area is decorated with food, and then this is a teaching kitchen that we have over here, and that's a little different from Philadelphia, because if you've ever been there, you kind of go upstairs, but here it's sort of like a fishbowl, right? So people can be learning, but if you're not ready to learn yet, you can just be watching. And so the whole idea of the Culinary Literacy Center is not to be a culinary school. It's not to teach the next great chef. The idea is to teach you how to cook if you have food allergies. The idea is to teach you how to bring more vegetables into your food. The idea is to talk about farm to table, which this library happens to be a stone's throw from farms. I mean, so that's another positive thing. It'll also have outdoor planter beds. So lots of times you'll start by just going outside, picking the herbs and things that you'll need, and then go back inside for your class. It's also about teaching people about how to cook on $5-6 a day, things like that, and how to cook healthy. So the whole idea of the Culinary Center at Green Hills is showing our community how we can help them be more healthy. So at Mid-Continent Public Library, I think the thing that we discovered is that when we started by looking at how we can make our workplace a more healthy place and how we can be better for our staff. It made our staff happy. It made our staff begin to focus on health and wellness. And then we started sharing that with the community. So we have a healthier community through a healthier staff. So I think that concludes my content. So thank you. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Steve. That culture eats planning for lunch. I will not forget that one. We have time for questions, but before we get to that, I just want to interject. I'm with the Web Junction program at OCLC, and this whole staff wellness and community care topic is of real importance to us, so I want to just direct you or mention some key resources that we have available on that. One is a webinar actually that I did early this month called Taking Care of Self, Staff, and Community, which really talks about that thread of connection. If the staff is healthy and feeling good, then that extends to community. And then another webinar called Prioritizing and Promoting Self-Care to Avoid Burnout. Very timely and important topic, and lots of really good ideas to mitigate that direct fall toward burnout. And then another article, A Holistic Approach to Library Staff Health and Wellness, and this is from the Network of National Library of Medicine, and also a really good read. So with that, I turn it over to the audience to come up with these questions. For Steve, you have a great resource here. What would you like to know?
How do people get access to the wellness rooms? Do y'all control that?
How do people get access to the wellness rooms? They are pretty well open where people can just where people can just go into them, but we do keep an eye on them. We don't key card them or anything like that. Some of them we did key card, but we just started to just put the thumb lock, and then we've got the staff, and then we just keep an eye on them and make sure that there's not anybody in there for too long, and we'll knock on the door and all of that. So far that's been the MO for the wellness rooms.
So the question was, how do you recommend starting a culinary project or a kitchen, basically?
Well, one of the things that we decided, even before we actually took the leap to build the teaching kitchens, is we started talking with some educational chefs. And what they kept telling us was that you can do a whole lot before you put in your first stove. One of my chefs that I work with all the time says, no one has knife skills. No one has knife skills. And so he said, you can do knife skills with celery and knives and any place. And you really don't even need, you don't need anything. He said, ideally, you probably are going to want a portable sink. And he said you could get a portable sink from like a camping store or something like that. The other thing that he recommended very strongly, and that I've been challenging everyone to do, is to not buy any devices that you can't also buy at Target, Walmart, Bed Bath & Beyond, places like that. Because again, the idea is not to create a culinary school, but to teach but to have skills that everyone can replicate, and that's where your folks are going to be buying their kitchen supplies. They're not going to go to Williams-Sonoma necessarily. So kind of buy that lower end stuff. You'll have to replace it more often, but it'll be a bigger common denominator. But start with basic skills, is what he said, and then you can start moving to other areas. And for us, it was always about focusing on the need of the public. Not necessarily to be America's Next Top Chef, but to do better in their home. When we were originally talking about this, we were talking about people learning how to bake bread, but everybody did that over the last 2 years. So I'm not sure what that benchmark's going to be anymore. But yeah, does that help? Yeah. And in fact, that is the model. So that nice library that I showed you is sort of like a center, but it's from that center that everything radiates out to our 33 other libraries. And we'll just have kitchen in a box, and we'll take them out there and start doing preliminary programs and say, and if you want to learn more, follow us back to this other library. So, yeah.
Wow, very exciting. Other questions? If you have a question, please step forward. I know you've learned a lot and heard a lot from Steve, so
Well, I did want to reiterate something because you mentioned some really important things on the Web Junction training, and wellness and mental wellness and mindfulness is something that's been very important for us. Actually, I had a couple of my branch managers here and they left, and I was going to have them tell you how I signed off all of my email messages during the pandemic. And the thing that I always told all of my staff during the pandemic is, take care of yourself and take care of your family, and then worry about the library. And that's a message and something that we've been working on a lot. And as I personally decided to step down, a lot of folks have realized that is a part of what's going on here, is that I know I need to take care of myself, and I'm walking the walk. So I mean that was an interesting byproduct that I didn't expect from some of our wellness messaging, but always making sure that your staff understands that you do care about them, and you care about them a lot, and you want them to take care of themselves. And every so often you're going to have to yell at them for putting the books away in the wrong order. But if you constantly reinforce, take care of yourself, take care of your family, and mean it, then that goes a long way toward not just mental health and mindfulness, but also larger community health.
I'm also really interested in the crossover between the things that you do for staff, like the soft padded carpet, that then also benefits the community. And I think that there are any number of instances where that works.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about some of those, but I mean, it's these things you keep looking for the triple win, right? I mean, the moving to LED lights from our fluorescent lights, which our fluorescent lights were horrible, they were hot, they were harsh, they were expensive. We put in these better lights, which, we have less people having headaches, taking off headache days because the lights are so terrible. Our buildings are cheaper to operate. Our customers feel like it's more comfortable and warm and homey. Win, 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 win. Why wouldn't you do that every single day? And that's the thing that you look for. Okay, everyone's tripping over our carpet. We got to do something about the floor. But as you're thinking about replacing the floor, think about how it can have impacts in other ways, and it will have impacts in other ways. And it's just, then it just becomes part of messaging. You will never be able to prove the negative, to be able to prove, well, what would have happened had we not done this? You won't be able to prove that, but you will know that there's going to be incredible benefits. So.
Yeah, well, that's a challenge, not having the clear metrics, but having that sense of greater well-being, I think, is plenty. Questions? If not, maybe another round of applause. Thank you so much, Steve. This was excellent.